First, I would like to ask Mike Upstone to give us a little overview, as he is very knowledgeable on the overall picture, to give us a bit of a review of what we have covered in the weekend. Or
Wow.
some summary words. It's quite an assignment, I know.
Well, so much, really. I mean, I've obviously covered a fair bit, and that was organising ourselves for a start. How do we consciously co-create things? How do we make organisational structures that help to prevent a lot of the personal issues and politics from arising in the first place? How do we move forward from that to create a systems thinking organisation based on a model for which we can take a community into not just sustainability but into abundance, so we can work not just with each other but with our neighbours, with other people and with the planet as a whole. We move from there into how we can use that energy, that flow of energy, to create our own conscious currency and connect through to technology providers, again making win-wins for everybody across the board. And today then we covered megaculture, which is the mix of all sorts of technologies that can be used together indoors or outdoors to stimulate mega quality, mega productivity, reliability, so we can have fantastic quality food all year round. And we had Dr. Irina Kosovskaya, who was covering the phenomenal healing fusion, energy healing technologies coming from Russia and from their space medicine program and from America. And we also had Charles Blake, who was talking about closing the loop on waste and how that can give us sovereignty over the materials that we use, how we can melt down and use plasma gasification and other techniques to recycle everything from organic waste through to tyres and metals and plastics and glass to yield palladium and gold and silver and carbon and things which can go straight back into 3D printers and could make our own mobile phones, our own watches, our own computers or cars or whatever. So that opens up a whole new world of open sourcing and resource sovereignty. We had Katya talking about the rock minerals, Urnasan from Agrifit, which are sprayed onto the leaves and underneath the leaves of plants to create plants that have much greater growth, much greater resistance to disease and pests, and create better, longer lasting, better tasting yields of crops, fruits and vegetables. And we also had Nicholas, who was talking about the different kind of nuclear reactor that's been ignored so far, that is safe and doesn't lead to weaponization. I wonder why that hasn't been taken up. And we also had Gerhard, who was also talking about energy technologies, connecting in many ways and supporting and bringing in other information to the information that Jim Schmidt presented as well on energy technologies. So we've learned a lot about energy technologies this weekend. And we had Biere, who was talking about consciousness and Kundalini and how important that is to her work and how that connects into supporting all sorts of other things. Our spiritual consciousness, another form of free energy which can support us in our lives, but we need to know what we're dealing with, because otherwise we end up with wobbly people who don't know what to do with the energy. I've been there. And we've had Casper, who was talking about the Consciousness Institute and the work here, and that work was supported by Claudia in her presentation today, which also covered the particular technology which linked through to the work of Jung, which uses skin resistance to indicate psychological resistance, and we can use that as a way to go to issues, revisit them again and again and again until we have a nice smooth response instead of a "ooh, that was horrible" kind of response. So that's all about undoing, and that links back to the technologies of Irina again, which are the regenerative technologies are about undoing things, and very often we have a little shadow reappearing of an injury or a psychological trauma or something else as we go back and we undo things. So all roads, I think, lead to the same place. We've had a lot of science, we've had spirituality, we've had all sorts of different looks at different kinds of energy and technology, but ultimately it's all the same, isn't it? We follow one route and we all end up in the same place.
Wow, I'm impressed about it. Quite a good summary. You covered it all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so let's say about questions. What I was thinking of something. Like if we had basically, there's so much inspiration in all these things, and each time you hear a lecture and you get, oh wow, that's it, and that's the solution for that. And then comes a point. What Gerhard also touched upon, and that is, eventually the responsibility comes back to ourselves. So where do we start, and how do we overcome the lethargy or whatever of those who are not in the know yet? And I would like to pose just this question of like the extreme brilliance and intelligent solutions we have covered in the whole weekend. How do we get it done? Like, what is the solution to this mental aspect? Is anybody wants to answer that? You know what I mean? Like there is this. It's extremely brilliant. On the other hand, there are stupidities. There is distrust, and there's all these other factors we know are, let's say, for the moment, out there. And how do we get that? How do we overcome that? Does anybody would like to say something about it? One of the speakers.
I can touch upon it.
All right.
Is it on? So during a course I did in sustainability, there was a professor from the Royal Technical High School or university. He was working with science and industrial things. He was majoring in that. And he said, the thing we have to do is, we know what we have to do, but nobody want to be starting to do it. Because if a country decides, say Sweden decides, let's go this route and show people it could be done, we instantly becomes the loser. Because if nobody adopts, we're spending so much resources on doing something nobody else cares about. So the struggle is, who want to go first as a country?
Mm-hmm. All right.
Touching upon it.
Okay, there may be more to it, yeah? Gerhard?
My solution would be instead of one country and instead of one person starting, that to start in a community, because that's for me the solution in many directions. And I don't think that those communities starting are losers. It works quite good. I was 3 years with Tempelhof, Schloss Tempelhof, and it's running tremendously from 20 people 5.5 years ago to 150 and 50 kids and 3 years of own free school. And there are 70-80% from their own farm products, and so many things are running quite in a good way. So I think it's the thing. I don't know who it was, Nelson Mandela or someone else. Just be what you want to see, the change you want to see in the world. Just be it or do it. What you want to see as change in the world, and
be what you want to see. Be the change what you want to see.
Be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah.
Very, very good. This is very interesting. Could you repeat the name exactly of this community?
Schloss Tempelhof.
Schloss Tempelhof. Okay, I got it here.
Schloss with double S minus Tempelhof.
Tempelhof. Thank you. This is very interesting. I think it's good to have an example, and such an example that's actually working should be advertised like crazy, because that is like what other people will look toward and copy. As we know, people copy. Bima.
Yeah, I have some reflections about it as I have been living in community and really had these visions and see what's happening when somebody comes with other ideas or gets scared. You know, you have been there. And I've seen it and heard. I met people from all different communities in the world. And there are similar problems coming up, connections, relationships, and what I have realized, what I believe in today, we are living in a new time, and we create the energy field between us in the networking like we are doing. We are here now, and I believe that when that field of connections around the world through internet, whatever, when we are strong enough, there will be groups jumping down already in connection with each other and not fighting and establishing different. That's what I have seen is our future. Instead, because if we are a few coming down, 100 people more as we did in our community, and we haven't had time to learn to know each other. And when you should start that process with all the things, you know, if we had you there to do all the processing or something like that. But we don't have that. We have different roads, and everyone wants to be seen and understood. Like children. We are children. We are like, we are children of the planet. And we need to grow up and connect. We are not grown up until we can connect and create energy fields from our hearts together. And I think we are working. That's why we are here now. So when future comes, we come in community. Oh, we can go there, and maybe there is one, and there is one, so we can travel between them. And there will be very good education. That was my dream when I initiated the community where I live. The education was in the center, and there was a place where we could we could be inspiration for others to do the same. And then we can, instead of going just lying in the sun in Mallorca or whatever, and just to go to restaurants, we can visit these different communities and get inspiration for next generation. That's my dream. I don't know. Crazy, but...
Thank you, great.
I would like to also give an answer. I think the point is to keep going on, each of us on our different subjects, and keep communicating as much as we can that things are not out of themselves. They are a product of our agreement, our thinking. A reality is a reality because we think it is. And if we get out the idea that it's about if we agree and if we have a better solution, we communicate the better solution. That goes for the mental area, the inside area, the inner space, where you can change things in life by looking at your own consideration. And it goes about heating, water, food. Let's just start and create different realities. And the other realities will they don't have fans anymore. They will get smaller and smaller, and the better solution will be adopted because people are not crazy. They want better solutions, and I think they want it soon. I think that would be a way to go.
Perfect. I think this question is pretty much answered. Anybody else who wants to chip in on that?
I just was thinking about the morphogenetic fields of Rupert Sheldrake. So if we start up, then it comes over in other parts of the world. So it's something overcoming. Just start and continue, and then other fields, connecting with people who are thinking on the same field, and then it will go quicker and quicker.
It's interesting you say morphogenetic field. Bima calls it field, but we're talking about the same thing. Claudia would call it consciousness field, or very interesting. Also, the very different wordings and terminology we use for things. This is another subject that will have to be sooner or later addressed. That we start talking the same language. That's another point. Yes, Mike.
Well, just to chip in a little bit, Caspar. I do a lot of photography of nature. What I observe in photographing the patterns on the surface of water, for example, is that you see the waves. And then if you move much closer, you don't see any waves. And if you keep moving closer and closer and closer, then the waves start to appear again. And it's the same if you step back from them. And so what we seem to have is bands of waves or resonance and bands of chaos in between. And I think we're all rising in frequency and we're moving between these bands. And when we look at chaos theory, we can consider, for example, the way that a bowl of water will freeze overnight, and we see the patterns that appear in that water. And when the water crystallizes, those crystals appear to come from many places from the same time and all join up absolutely perfectly, which is an effortless exercise. And other times what you see is the random noise patterns. My feeling is, we're not here to push anyone. We can only lead our horses to water when people are not ready for the information. They're simply not ready for the information. But there will be someone who is ready for that information. So the phrase is in English, you can only lead your horses to water. You can't force them to drink. If we try and stuff people's snouts in the trough, then what we'll get is choking, coughing, spluttering, biting and kicking. And I know that because I was a horse once, and I used to go around biting and kicking people who tried to stuff my snout in the trough. So we need to be respectful of others and just rely on the resonance and the frequency that will pull in the right people at the right time, and everything will work out correctly. And I think we also need to consider the different capabilities of people. When we look at this situation, if we look in the commercial world, we see people called early adopters. They're the people who queue outside the Apple shops for the newest iPhone or iPod or whatever, and they wait overnight for the first release of those devices. And you've got other people who are still writing with a pen and paper and wouldn't dream of getting one until Auntie Nellie, who's 97, has one for a couple of years first. So we all have different sort of things that we are comfortable with and familiar with. And I guess that what I'm saying is that the propensity of us is to go out and to research and to network and to explore and to try and be as close to the cutting edge as possible. And if we leave good, solid, useful tools and information and connections behind us, then other people will come along at the right time and pick them up.
Great, thank you. I think we covered it pretty well. Perhaps I may add something myself, and that is what I believe is that the answer really lies in maintaining this super high frequency that we actually manifest in this weekend, and not allow any interference to lower our vibrations. We have to maintain it, keep it, repeat it, do more meetings like this, keep doing it, and eventually everyone will come up to this point. That's pretty much covered. Now I would like to ask if anybody would like to ask some specific questions of one of the speakers on any particular subject or general or whatever you would like.
Thank you, I would like to say.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Nice to hear. Thank you. Great. All right. Uh-huh. I have myself, I'm prepared some questions, so I have some very specific questions. I want to know this, I got a little concerned about this thorium. Is it in the end still radioactive? Or because that would be some concern that I actually picked up this question somewhere.
Yes.
Discussing.
If you look at old nuclear power, it's radioactive for a long time. But using this technique, you can reduce it by 1,000-folds. So something being radioactive for 1,000 years, it's not maybe 30 years.
So it's less?
It's less. It's still radioactive, but much less.
Okay, so I'm just trying to estimate the danger. Is it because normally nuclear energy, we don't want, even Gerhard had one of these things, energy, no. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have
yeah.
a bit of an interesting dichotomy
Yes.
there. So I thought it's good to address this.
Yes.
That's my general thought, because we probably have easier ways of using energy. But even though with my connection with free energy, I learned a lot of people, and in the last 2 years I learned 3 methods of getting away with the radiation and reducing it dramatically, 90% or 50% or even more. And these are possibilities, totally different the way they are working, but they can't be established because, some other forces are working against it. But it is possible, and we don't have to wait for generations to reduce it.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that answers that question.
Do you have another?
Yeah, please.
Is there any waste with this method? With the
What kind of wastes?
we have the waste with the other reactor. Is there some waste?
Yes, there is some radioactive waste, yes,
And
but
that's
dramatically reduced.
okay.
So this good thing is you can use fuel which is stockpiled for 10,000 years, put it into this machine, reduce it to basically zero in comparison, and you can get rid of all. There's also reactors. There's a 13-year-old child created a reactor that runs on nuclear fuel from the bombs. You can do whatever you want with it. You can get rid of it. And we have to start doing that.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is also a matter of understanding what really is going on, and I think you contributed a little bit to give us an alternative understanding, so thank you very much for that.
Yeah, there's a big conception of nuclear being dangerous, and of course, you look at the accidents, of course, you have a degree of fear, but fear is also something you're not aware of. Fear is lack of knowledge. So I hope I can distill some more or less fear.
All right, thank you. Yeah, you have the question?
No, not a question.
An
I
answer.
would. Well, let's see about that. I would like to make a general statement on that. We at the MGT Institute, we make a big point out of the technique to learn how to learn. And we have a simple way, and we think we figured out why people coming out of school education, or however we put it now, might have the idea not being able to understand certain areas. It's very simple to be traced back where the problem sits. So what we offer, if there is an interest, I mean, we heard so complicated subjects today, and I know there's whole sciences behind it. It is possible, if somebody wants to go more deep into a subject, to make an appointment, and whatever material it is, we will have it, and it's possible to get in the deep of it, get in the deep understanding. I think understanding is the way to get free in a way, not to let it to those who know, and so I cannot influence it. If we understand government, if we understand finance, if we understand physics and energy, we will own it. And that this is possible, and we offer courses in all this kind of subjects. Whatever you want to learn, it's possible to do that. We ourselves, for the consciousness technology, we have info evenings, and we have intro workshops, and the possibility to learn that. Thank you.
I can perhaps, thank you. I can perhaps add to that we will try to incorporate all the humongous amount of data actually that we were confronted with, and also details, which I wouldn't expect anybody to really memorize all this, and unlike Mike, being able to repeat it verbatim almost, which is exceptional. But it may some people take some more time to, and there we offer solutions in full courses, which will be developed, where one can sit down for a week or longer and study this in depth. So that's one of our offers. Okay, any other question? Thomas, you want to?
Well, I was wondering if there's always like two routes, or so the two routes, what are they? Well, one route is the funding route. We get funding, that's one route. We don't get funding, it's the other. And the funding is, of course, we are talking about big funding. But maybe my actual question would be, are we talking about activities that just, rich kids can do? How do we get a normal sheeple person to get out? Because if they don't have the money or the extra time, let's also think about that. Be fair to that situation. What do you guys think?
There's plenty out there, aren't there? And I think that, what I'm reminded of here is Jungian psychology. And the second element of Jungian psychology is that people have a propensity to think either in terms of patterns and pictures and imagination and intuition, or in terms of practicality, pragmatism and details. And the problem with the pragmatism and details is it's the antithesis, it's the opposite of rationality, and it's the opposite of knowledge seeking. But we have to acknowledge that there are, 2/3 of the people out there are focused on seeing things already working and touching them and seeing it on the news and having a neighbour who has one. So the best thing we can do for them, first of all, is to create the models and integrate the technologies in communities so that those people can travel to them and they can see them and they can touch them and they can ask questions, and that will win their confidence in terms of what they're dealing with, and they can ask practical questions about it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we can make easy ways for them to get into that kind of stuff as well. So, that's where other people can be connected to funding and contacts and everything else. We have to make it easy for people. In other words, they don't need to go around reinventing a wheel necessarily. So, everyone has their own time for getting into things. And I think that's really an important message. So, when those people are ready, they'll want to go out and acquire information. And there'll be things like, the internet means that information is going to travel exponentially more quickly than it ever has in the past. And then there's something which is the 100 monkeys syndrome coming in, or the creation of the consciousness fields that impacts people. So I think that the best thing we can do is to ground things, make examples of things, demonstrate things, do the troubleshooting, do the problem solving, and then if we are involved in big funds and stuff like that, then we can create models that other people can easily hook into. And part of the aim of what we're trying to deal with is not just the technology, which is critical, or the funding, which is also critical, but the organisation tools and how we deal with each other, which is also critical. So there are a number of different elements that we're trying to create little simple bridges to help that to manifest. But, respectfully, we have to appreciate that when the time's right, people can step into whatever they feel comfortable with.
Thank you very much. Thomas, does that answer your question? All right, anybody else would like? Yes,
I have a
please.
comment. I don't know if it's that, but it's a reflection I also have here. Because in the network, Universal Trust, there is also one part which is education, which hasn't been up so much. And you're talking that you have courses, that's part of education. And I know that Gerard is involved in that, and you too. And for me, that is fundamental, because next generation, they are dependent on how they will be treated in their educational field. So I think we have to see, that has been my passion for a long time, but today I can't see that kind of education that is needed. I know there are some seeds here and there, and that also should be brought up very clearly, because that's our gift to the next generation. If we can offer possibilities for them to be educated in another way than programmed into machines. as it is today, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bima. That will be a very important aspect, of course. Yeah, I think that answers it fully, doesn't it? Anybody else would like to say something on this subject? All right. Very specific question that I have is that's more to Mike. How many people would you need to get a conscious currency created? You mentioned you need a whole community to put their signatures there. What numbers are we thinking of?
I think whoever comes first does it. It's as simple as that. We have contacts with technology providers. We've got the outline contracts written. We have some people who've said, yes, I will accept up to 50% of this alternative complementary currency to go into that. So to my mind, there are no particular limits. It's whoever has the energy and the wish and the inclination to do it first.
Do I understand it right? That if you have 10 people, would it be enough of a community to get the technology
I don't see why not. Yeah,
okay.
But the main thing is that there needs to be a commitment, I think, to a holistic plan. It's not just a question of getting one aspect of this. The idea is that you can get the energy healing equipment, for example, but what about your food supply? What about your water? What about your energy and everything else? So there needs to be, probably 10 is gonna push that as an exercise. You probably need 50, 100, 150 people, something like that, to have a pretty decent number of people who can do things like build a barn and do the other aspects of things to come together and to make it happen. So one of the issues is that a lot of communities have a lot of problems, historical problems and other problems going on. So it's inspiring to me to hear about Gerhard's community who are using consensus tools and doing it very, very well. That to me is very exciting to hear about.
Yes, I feel the same way. Yeah. All right, thank you. That answers my question. Good. Anybody else would like to ask one of the speakers a question, or the whole panel? Thomas, please come around.
It's a question for you, Kaspar. You have a pretty good grasp of the universal trust and this conference here, and also a pretty good grasp of Ubuntu. And I was wondering, also asking, looking at the community idea and the first step in Ubuntu, how does that fit together in your head?
Very good question. We have Michael Tellence's Ubuntu contributionism is based on the idea that you get a community where you live and not an intentional community. Now, I will branch this question and the answer over to Gerhard as well, because I have a question to Gerhard, and that is this community an intentional community, or is that a local village community? The Schloss, Schloss Tempelhof.
No, it's really an intentional community. It's not any sector, because the main subject is to live together with the different generations and not to put the elder people and the handicapped people and the illness people and the kids in different buildings, but to live all together and to communicate as done in former times or in other countries. It's still done, and to have a good connection to the outside and to do seminars and to bring all these things also to others. And continue with seminars and to bring it. It's a high level idea to bring peace into the world, like it's with Tamera, where they say they want to live more peaceful and to bring Palestine and Israel together and have a peace university. Well, we have also the idea of bringing the peace more into the world. And of course, this needs to have peace in the community and to peace in the partnership, and also to be in peace with yourself. Only then it's possible to bring this to the outside. So what we practice can be seen and reproduced by others. So that's quite a big ideal aim, and let's see what we can do.
Yes, thank you. That's actually very. So let's come back to the question, which is about Ubuntu and particularly Ubuntu contributionism. Michael Tellinger. In my opinion, there is a problem built into this concept and this model, which I have been studying now for quite a bit. And the thing that we seem to run into is, let's say, let's take Biere here. Okay, so now if I have to make Biere into a Ubuntu community, I have to start talking to the neighbors, to their neighbors, and I have to get probably at least 7, 8, maybe 10 people really committed who will carry the project and have the intention to carry it out in the whole community. Now, so far, I mean, Michael Tellinger lives in Boven-Waterval, and he has not been able to get that community directly addressed and turned around into a workable community. He has chosen the political route, and the political route so far hasn't paid off in very concrete financial support, which he was basically aiming for. It would have perhaps helped, but I see there is even an analogy with the universal trust in a particular way that, yes, we can go the way of getting funding from external sources, or we somehow, with the conscious money creation, conscious creation tools, create the value and turn it into money, which is, I think, not the easiest way. I mean, the funding would be great because you can start it off with a bang. You know, you can say, hey, let's go. Get 15 people going, you get paid, and they'll all go for it. Because so far, we have been used in this society to operate, okay, the financing comes first, and then we'll all do whatever we promise to do. So maybe our challenge is to reverse that and say, okay, we start out from the basic thought that we do not need to have in order to do. We do, and we will have. And that is a very basic point, because as long as we do have the consideration we must have before we can do, we may be actually trapping ourselves into a stationary situation. So that is definitely an aspect. So intentional communities, I think that's great. I mean, that should continue, and it has been going on for a long time. We have the Vindhorn, we have everywhere this kind of communities, and it's great, and that should continue because they set examples, just like Gerhard said. But there remains this challenge that a village, we should get a village, and it should be possible to actually get this manifested in a village. And I think that would need a very well thought out strategic plan. And so far, I have not actually seen the full workout, not even from Michael Tellinger, to actually get it manifested in a village where you're a stranger or you're one person who has realized a model. How did you get that across? You have to communicate, we know that. But you have to be very convincing, or you have to take it on a very easy 10-year plan, and maybe that works. But this is a challenge. There is no complete answers to that. But I'm very aware, I'm glad you brought up that point. So that's what I would like to say on that, yeah. Anybody else would like to say something on that?
That's about just the same I wanted to add to this question, that with funding, I more and more come to the conclusion that that's the old idea that we need money to do something, and it more and more looks like if you have the right people and the right thinking, then you can do whatever you want, and the manpower or the connection is much more important than the money. And the money seems to be the same as before. We can do something if the politics change, or if the weather changes, or if the oil price drops, or whatever. I have the reasons why I can't do something in the outside, and I'm not starting at my place. So we are the ones we are waiting for. And so we can do it if we believe it, and if we take off the blockage, which is just here in our mind. So we again with the consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. And consciousness, I may add to that, perhaps purpose. Like there is a historical example, and this one I know very well. L. Ron Hubbard from the Scientology fame, who is now in great disfame, managed to get a group together of like several thousand, like went up to at least 6,000 people. And he advertised with impossible conditions, low or no pay, various things like that, a purpose. But the key, he recruited all these people on the basis of purpose only. And they just had to work 24 hours a day almost. and people did and joined. And they had to sign a contract for 1 billion years. Now, that's a spiritual contract, of course, but it shows the fact that this organization worked for quite a while. It's actually still working. It's a little bit off the rails, but but it is interesting that this is possible. And I'm sure there's other organizations. I mean, this has been military organization type campaigns where people would just go on purpose to fight the enemy, and there's several other of those things. So that may be the key. Purpose, really well presented, and that hits the high vibration of the spiritual being. The being will connect and will then offer all the energy they have, and that is much more valuable than money. Yes? Katja?
I just want to add, I think one thing that pops up when it's difficult, or that creativity is coming again. We have to be very creative to create what we want have. So we are like forced to be more creative than 20 years ago. So if we don't have the issues to do something, then we will invent them. And it's like, for me, it's creativity, a driving tool in the process.
Yes, that's very well said, yeah. And that adds to the infinite creativity that solves the problems, and that's, of course, what you need. Mike?
Yeah, and I think we've learned lessons along the way, haven't we? You know, let's face it, there was a stage where it was money at any price. That's the typical venture capital model. I want you, mind, body, and soul. And your invention, and I want to be the owner, and you're going to work for me, and. And it's like, well, you want every last drop of blood. Well, we've learned enough that that's not going to work. So we're already on a slightly different path, I think. So that is not going to happen. And none of us care who you are, what money you've got, and all the rest of it. That doesn't count at all. The key is, can we meet on an equal, fair, equitable playing field? Can we share an intention which has mutuality? And if we can do that, then we have the conditions upon which we can engage with other people. And my feeling is, you know, the question is money part of the solution? It may be. It may be if it comes with the right terms and that mutuality of intention and that equitable spirit. But if it doesn't, then the people with the money are going to be bypassed, because the people with the ideas and the inventions and the creativity are going to be manifesting anyway. And if that happens, well, let's look at a lot of this stuff. You know, what a lot of people have been chasing the money and chasing the RV and chasing the gold-backed currencies and the Dragon family funds and all the rest of it. Well, what if energy's free? Everything's free because everything's a function of energy. It might not happen instantly, but it will happen. And if we've got transmutation of materials, what does that do to the gold, folks? Dragon families and all the rest of it? Bye-bye. That's all done. We can harvest billions of tons of gold from the oceans in its monoatomic form in any case. And the resource sovereignty comes in, which was what Charles Blake was talking about. So, in fact, there are so many solutions out there at the moment. It's absolutely beyond belief. So the question is, have the money people got the resonance to meet us in terms of what we're doing and to do it equitably? And if not, thank you very much. That's cool. You go your path. You've got your stuff to learn. We may go down our path and we've got our stuff to learn, undoubtedly. But we'll keep doing it and we'll keep following our intention. So if we've got resonance, if we've got equity, then the time might be right to engage with the money. And if not, then it will come and be thrown at the technologies when they start to manifest, because the money cannot afford not to be involved in those solutions of the future, because a lot of them are going to wipe out all of the solutions of the past and indeed potentially the present. Look at what happened to Kodak. Around about the year, it was 98, I think it was, something like that. They were valued at 56 times their earnings, 56 times their profits. So 56 years' profits equaled the value of Kodak. It wasn't very sustainable, but the big thing was that Kodak were going to be kings of digital. Well, Kodak were riding another horse. They were riding film and chemicals and paper. And they didn't commit to jumping onto the other horse. And the same thing has happened in not just digital imaging, but digital music and all sorts of other ways. And they were told. They knew what was going to happen. They didn't want to believe it, and their solution was a bucket of sand into which they wanted to insert their heads. So, the writing's on the wall, I think, quite clearly. It's up to the money people if they want to engage on equitable terms. Yeah, stunning, isn't it? How much power have we got?
Thank you. Just as an aside, there's something that one subject actually that we did not really cover this weekend. I just realized it while you were talking. That is the subject of open source. You see, there was, to my knowledge, if you look at the history of the suppression of this kind of free energy technologies, we always see the role of the money. That was very clear, and the suppression came from the money sources. So there was, to my knowledge, it was the QEG that came out, and that became open source. And as far as I know, that was one of the first ones. There may have been earlier ones, but it has not really become a movement or a tradition. It is still the patents, the copyrights, and that is still what we inherit from the capitalistic system. Somehow, I have known for quite a while that the answer to free energy spreading over the world will have to include open source, open communication, and protection for the sources. Universal trust is the solution because it provides both. So that is something we haven't really covered, but I think that's very key, because this open communication is what will break the wall of suppression, because there is nothing that can actually counter that. And that should be every inventor, everyone connected to free energy should be penetrated with that idea that they know that there is no way to make a lot of money with it in this world. It is just not possible. And if they know that, well, they will jump to the alternatives. So I think that's one other aspect.
Can I follow up on this? This
Yes,
is
please.
so important. This is where the writing's on the wall for the inventors as well. If you've got the world is going to change. The first person who releases a reliable, safe, simple, free energy technology is going to change the paradigm for everyone else. And if you've been sitting on your invention out there worth, $10 trillion or whatever it is, that is going to be worth $10 overnight. So, there is a way of earning money off open sourcing. It's, you can copyright at the same time as open sourcing. You can put that into trust. You can open source and you can add a commercial license. And the commercial license could say, for example, you're an individual, you can have that for free. Consider donating if you want. And if you're a small or medium enterprise under a turnover or whatever, well, we'd appreciate 9% of your profits or your turnover from the sale of this product. And if you're General Electric, well, we'll have 33%, thank you very much, because I'm a great believer in the universe teaching in resonance and irony, and that seems to contain both at the same time. So we can do this in terms of reaching out to the world. But if the inventors are going to sit there and obsess about the money, then the one person who does it first, the others are going to miss the boat. So be aware that once it happens, it's like digital media happening. The paradigm's already changed, and you've got no choice then, pretty much, unless your project is of just certain size and strategic importance. You're not going to get the money at that stage. But, if you're second on the boat, it's probably going to be too late. So when it happens, this could happen very, very quickly. And the issue with the QEG, unfortunately, was I think there were probably easier, simpler, better options out there, and it was probably a poor choice. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. And there were always risks in getting people involved in something that wasn't absolutely, rock solid and simple and proven or provable. And that caused a lot of people a lot of concern at the time. So if another technology had been chosen, it would probably be out there already and fully proven. But I think it's only a matter of time. It's got to happen. So inventors, we've all got our stuff that we need to learn from this situation, and if your big thing is about control and earning billions upon billions of dollars, have another think about it. I know it's really hard, but if you've worked on this for years and years and years, and you've committed yourself and you've run risks and stuff like that, then face the fact that the environment is changing, and you will not be the one who makes that not worthwhile if you're not the first one to slap his pony on the bottom and put it in a different kind of race.
Thank you very much. Yes, Gerard?
Concerning the QEG, I want to underline that I learned quite a big lesson that the QEG was not brought to us as the first self-running free energy system. That was the intention why I came to Morocco, and after 2 weeks being there, I learned that the QEG was there, and the inventor or the inventors to bring the open source to the people, because it was fascinating that within 9 or 12 months, I think in Germany, Austria and Switzerland, we had 500 people in groups trying to build 40 QEGs, and even though this was with the money of 5,000 euro each, and they didn't want to buy something like this, they wanted to build it. So it were active people within 1 year, so many. And so the main work to do for the QEG was to bring the open source into the world, because they announced it, I think, 1 or 2 weeks before they left the country in America, that they will open source it on a certain date, and it was at that date. And during the first 24 hours, 20,000 people downloaded the QEG manual of 30 pages, and it was really a big thing. And now with Keshe, it's nearly the same. He is also not probably the solution and bringing us a working unit, but he got a more sophisticated or much more people now working together. There are many, many Facebook groups with hundreds of people and doing things in open source, and not as before where each developer was in his own cellar and working on its own because they had fear of getting stolen the piece or not getting the money back or having anxiety because of their life. And because of those open source things where they know they have to do it in this way, otherwise only in this way they get safe for the system and for themselves. And that's very, very clear with Cache, with the Facebook groups. And the very, very nice thing I heard about, I'm not the Facebook specialist, but I heard from others working in Facebook quite a lot, that they see a big difference between Facebook on one side and between the Facebook groups of Cache, where the people have another, completely other, with each other, a friendly communication and very nice habits, not like the normal Facebook groups. And that's very, very nice to hear and to see what's happening there.
I think that's great to hear this. Actually, it's such a positive piece of news that we can almost, like, with this vision, just let's carry on, and we can almost conclude, let's continue. That's sort of the idea, you know?
Absolutely. Well, that, you've just described a human supercomputer coming together. That's incredibly powerful, and more resonance and irony, isn't it? Because Facebook, of all the things, it's not the cleanest, most ethical sort of organization in the world, and there it is providing a platform for something that really is bound together by high frequency and resonance. So lovely job, isn't it? The universe works in very, very weird and wonderful ways.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I think that was that point. Any other questions?
Yeah, and if you want more of anything in particular, write to Caspar and Claudia and say, we loved this, we want to see more of it, or we want to come to a conference. You're now in charge. Your feedback becomes the thing that's going to drive this. Is it going to happen in a year's time, or is it going to happen in 3 months' time? Because you're going to break down the doors if it's not going to happen. So it's entirely up to the people out there as to how things move.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
So, connecting to just what you said, we would be honored to regard this as the first conference in this sense, the universal trust meeting point of all these wonderful spirits, and we really would like to have conferences like that more often, at least once a year. So spread it and let's do that and come, and other geniuses from all sides, if it's active or passive, come and join it, and we do that.
Thank you very much. All right. Are we through the questions? Any more things you would like to say as speakers? Otherwise, yeah?
A confession. My memory isn't so good because I forgot to mention Brenda Williams and the Triad Wave, didn't I? So there we go. Hold my hand up. I don't know how I could have missed Brenda, but there you go. But she's got her mention now.
On Brenda, I asked Brenda after the speech yesterday because I couldn't fully follow it from the American accent and various things. So I asked her if she had a transcript, and she actually sent it to me. So somehow or other, I will make this available to all of you, and that may be perhaps the subject of the first email, where there is a Dropbox link where you can download it. We will see on that. And there may be some other files which you get sent or have the option to download it. To conclude, I personally think it's very useful to also have written data in, to balance the flow and to look up some references and links and things like that.
What about the files which will be for download? The files of the talk which will be for...
Yeah, we will try to work out some edited version of this whole thing and present it somehow. As soon as we know how we do that and when it's done, we'll let you know.
And Caspar, some of the stuff that I've been talking about is already up, and it has been for a while on the universaltrust.org website under projects, models and tools. So the universaltrust, all one word, .org is the website for at least some more information about some of the things that have been covered.
Yeah, I will include that in the email also, the URL and this kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's if this is if we covered, I think we covered most of the subjects. Don't you agree? Okay, then it's time for the acknowledgments. Also a very important part. First of all, I would like to acknowledge all of you present here for coming and sharing with us, and for being very in communication and a very pleasant group to be with, and that's very much appreciated. So give ourselves a hand for that. All right, then I would like to thank the Universal Trust's chairman, Mike, and members for their contributions. And this goes over a large part of this planet, the United States, Australia, and various countries, Belgium, Holland, etc. So all the Universal Trust members, thank you very much, and let's give them a hand. Then I would like to thank in very particular one Universal Trust member, and John Geerlings. Please stand up and take a bow, because he has been very contributive to the success of this. Thank you, John. Then I would like to acknowledge Magdalena Moser, who is with, and Anouk, for her cuisine and exquisite service. Thank you. And also would like to acknowledge Sarah, who has been helping Magdalena, who is right now not there and probably in the kitchen assisting Magdalena still.
And of course, Thomas.
And of course, Thomas has been actually, well, yeah. Let me say something. Thomas has actually taken the initiative to broadcast a part of the event, or a big part of the event, to the various members of the trust, so they could actually be in communication, and also that helped very much for them to have the feeling of being with us. So that's very much appreciated, Thomas. And
actually, he was the one who connected us all.
Thomas is the great connector. Thank you very much. Through Thomas, we actually, Ubuntu, we connected, Thomas was at the Ubuntu event, and through Ubuntu we connected to the Universal Trust, and resulting in myself becoming a member. Mike, the chairman, invited me then to become a member after he read our book, and so the whole connection came about. So again, thank you all, and that's it for the official end of the event.
Thank you, Casper.
Thank me also. Okay. All right. Wow. Thank you. All right. Enjoy the evening. Thank you very much.